The Mass Effect Legendary Edition takes us back aboard the Normandy in this collection of all 3 games and almost all of the DLC. I've been spending a couple of days with the game, so welcome to our review in progress. A full review will be available on overlode.co.uk starting next week. However, it's 3 games, they're about 50 hours each, and we only got access to the game on Tuesday, so this is my impressions having played around 10 hours of Mass Effect and the opening hour of each of the other games just to check out how they are. When jumping back into Mass Effect 1, you just remember how amazing that opening music is and how epic the scale feels. I was once again hit with the orchestration that was so ahead of its time. That was very much of the BioWare way. That hasn't been lost. The sound mixing across the entire collection is actually fantastic. It's so loud, it's so booming. The gun effects are absolutely deafening. I actually have to turn it down occasionally in fights because it's mixed so much higher than the dialogue, which is obviously a lot of the game. Another new thing you'll notice is that there is a new leveling system that's offered to you. Instead of the traditional 1 to 60, you can play 1 to 30, which is just a condensed, it's halved from the 60 obviously. I'm not entirely sure what function that serves, perhaps just ease of use for people that don't want to be going into the menu all the time, especially having to level up your teammates, but the game always had an auto leveling system for teammates that was never too much of a problem, so I decided to stick with the 1 to 60 because I liked the role-playing elements of the role-playing game, and that's another thing you notice when playing Mass Effect. This is the first time I'd played the first Mass Effect since 2008, and you forget how much more of a kind of classic BioWare RPG it is than the subsequent really action-heavy Mass Effect 2 and the full-on action game of Mass Effect 3. It's for good and for bad, obviously. Mass Effect 1, there's a lot more, it feels like there's a lot more dialogue options that aren't spelled out to you. It's a lot more investigation. You feel more of kind of like this space cop on the beat, as opposed to in the later games always felt like you're the space terminator. But Mass Effect 2, the original, was the one most in need of the update, because obviously it's a 360 game from 2007, and it looks great. It looks like a PlayStation 4 game, which this is. I've been playing it on the PlayStation 5, but the actual dedicated PlayStation 5 enhancements aren't available yet. It just runs a bit better if you're using it on the new consoles. Mass Effect really needed it. However, still, I can't tell if these animations are just clunky or if they were always like this, but for example, look at Shepard taking cover here. It just looks a bit ridiculous, the way his knees and hips break to slide him along this kind of path. That's a little bit strange. There's also a lot of weird facial movement that I don't think was in the original game that reminds me of Mass Effect Andromeda, and I don't know if I'm just like prescribing that onto the game, because obviously the most recent Mass Effect product is well known for how ridiculous the animations looked, especially around the face, but it's just something about the eyes. Like, the eyes look ginormous, especially on, so I played the traditional male Shepard in Mass Effect 1, who is the character that I played like 15 years ago or whatever, and then the footage from subsequent games I've played as the Fem Shep, the kind of iconic red hair, kind of bobbed Fem Shep, and she doesn't seem to have that massive eye problem. I'm not entirely sure, but it looks really nice. The controls are still a bit clunky in Mass Effect 1. They haven't completely Mass Effect 2-ized Mass Effect 1, which I would have liked them to do. The combat is... the cliche was, the combat is the worst part of Mass Effect. Well, the combat in Mass Effect is the worst part of the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. It just doesn't feel great. The way enemies' health is kind of relayed to you doesn't feel great. The complete lack of any real waypoint system unless you manually assign one doesn't feel great. The way that there's no mission complete kind of state in Mass Effect 1, like in Mass Effect 2, it obviously tells you have just done this thing. In Mass Effect 1, a lot of the time you're just like, what am I doing? Check my journal. The journal isn't great. Where am I going? Okay, I have to go to this specific place. I suppose it's just kind of it's a reflex to 10 years of RPGs really laying out what you're supposed to do. Whereas Mass Effect, the original, was still in this kind of transitionary period before Western RPGs became this big thing. So, yeah, that could have been updated, but I don't know, is that what people want? Do they want like the really hardcore Mass Effect experience? That seems like the kind of thing you should be able to toggle on and off, because I'd much prefer a much more led experience, but not led in the sense of Mass Effect 3, where they were literally like, you can get rid of the conversations and just make this an action game. I want Mass Effect 2, which I always thought was the best Mass Effect game, and from the hour or so I played of it, after playing 10 hours of Mass Effect, I was like, do I really want to play through Mass Effect again just to get to Mass Effect 2? Because this is already so much better. The combat's so much better. It's just characters that I love. That crew from Mass Effect 2 is some of the best RPG characters that ever were. But I'm excited to go through. I'm going to commit to playing through Mass Effect all the way to the end of Mass Effect 3 with the one character, and just see if those consequences and choices that you're making are as kind of widespread as I remember them being. Obviously, Mass Effect 3 gets derided for having to bring everything together, kind of. It was like, okay, Christ, we've just spent 2 full games and like a decade of development time telling you that everything that you do matters, so we better have a payoff for every single decision you ever made. Like, if you let the preacher in the middle of the Citadel away with not having a pass in the first game, that better be paid off in the third game, or what's the point? So yeah, I will be playing it through to the completion, but obviously this is not a review of whether or not the Mass Effect games are good. You've made that decision. It's whether or not these ports are worth it, and I really think they are. The visual improvements are fantastic. You can see that from the footage you're looking at now. It just looks so clean. The lighting is so nice. It doesn't look like a PS5 or Xbox Series X game, but it looks like a really nice PS4 game. It looks like a contemporary game, which is a big improvement for something that, it's not like a Blue Point remake or anything like that. It's more in the vein of something like just kind of an HD remaster, if you will. It's kind of a funny juxtaposition, seeing the difference between this very clean, uncluttered, unbloody Mass Effect 1 and then the running controls of Mass Effect 1, where it looks like humanity has progressed to such a point in the future where they forgot how to run, and this is Shepard interpreting the old ways of how to run. That gets cleaned up in later games as well. I'm curious to see what people think if they're just jumping into this, or they never played Mass Effect 1 and they just picked it up at 2, because when I originally played Mass Effect 1, I played about 5 hours of it and I just really wasn't into it, because I think I bought it the same day I bought Halo 3 or something like that. So I was like, I have things to get on with here. Shotty Snipes, come on. It was Mass Effect 2 that really got me into it, and Mass Effect 2 really got me into this style of RPG. So I'd be curious to see, in the kind of years since Mass Effect has developed this kind of mythical quality, people going into it for the first time. I know Danielle Partis of this parish has not dipped into those games and she's considering playing it, so I'd be interested in getting that take, as opposed to me, who really clearly remembers Mass Effect 2 forensically, has mixed feelings on Mass Effect 3 and barely remembers Mass Effect 1. So I'm kind of at this weird point of it's almost a mountain of how much I care about Mass Effect, whereas when I'm in the while I'm in the Mass Effect 2 part of this review, I'll be probably having a blast. But I also want to play Mass Effect 3 divorced from all the ridiculousness of that launch, because obviously the ending people didn't like, and they kind of badgered BioWare to change it, and that led to some interesting directions about people thinking they have control over developers. So it was a weird inflection point, Mass Effect 3. Obviously a big appeal of this game is that all the DLC is available. All the DLC asterisks, there's actually one piece of DLC that they couldn't include because they lost the source code to it. I think it was some kind of battle arena, but that actually stops it saying. That's why it doesn't advertise itself as having all the DLC. It has basically all the DLC. Also, there is no Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, which I know a lot of people liked, but they decided not to include it. It was never something I really engaged with, but I suppose if you're going to do a Mass Effect Legendary Edition, you would assume it would be the most complete version of the thing. But also, on the other hand, I can understand if people are buying this game, first you have to get a player base to buy this game, then you have to get a player base to care about the multiplayer portion of 1/3 of this collection. It's just a bit unrealistic, and I can understand why they didn't include it, even though it would have been nice to have the complete collection of Mass Effect. There is a favor quality or favor frame rate mode on the new consoles. So on favor quality on the PlayStation 5, it's up to 60 frames a second at 4K, and at favor frame rate you can go up to 60 frames a second at 1440p. On the Xbox Series consoles, you can get up to 120 frames per second at 1440 on favor frame rate, but I do not have a fancy high frame rate monitor, so I've not been able to check that out, nor do I have the Xbox version of the game. Also worth pointing out, if you get it on PS4 and you eventually get the PS5 upgrade, The saves on the PlayStation consoles will not transfer for reasons beyond my conception. I have the official note from BioWare here that came with the review materials. I'll read it for you. This is from a Q&A section. If I am playing on a Gen 4 console and I get a Gen 5 console, will my save transfer? Microsoft will support save roaming for content available between generations, Xbox One and Xbox Series. Sony will not support save roaming between PS4 and PS5. So I'd keep that in mind. If you're going to go for the platinum in this or something like that, you really have to commit to this version of it. I don't actually know when the next generation improvements are going to happen, so that's something that's not potentially the most pressing matter, but it's just strange. Sony's cross-generation saving stuff has been so bad, and this is just another example of it. Overall, the collection is what I expected it to be. They're a really polished, cleaned up version of 3 great games, one of which is an incredible game, Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 1 is still pretty dated in some ways, but they have improved it. They've included a control scheme that's closer to Mass Effect 2 and 3. They've sped up the elevators, hurrah, hurrah, although you spend a lot of time in Mass Effect 1 going from like elevator, walk across this very barren plane with only a few NPCs, elevator again. I know that's like a 15-year-old meme at this point, but I forgot how prevalent it was. Thankfully, they're very fast. But yeah, if you've not played Mass Effect, it's a great time to pick them up. There's not much else coming out for the next couple of months, so if you want a couple of 350 to 100 hour RPGs to dive into, this is a great package. It's a good value. The games all look great. 2 of them control brilliantly, and there's just not much like Mass Effect around right now. It was a really ambitious project to announce a game as a trilogy, and to announce an RPG trilogy that you would be able to release within 2007 to 2012, 11, or whenever Mass Effect 3 came out. It wasn't that long span of time to get these huge games out, so it's nice to go back to them, and I really hope that new Mass Effect that they teased really learns from these games and has the time to become something special again, because Andromeda is such a shame. That shouldn't be the lasting memory of Mass Effect. Mass Effect 2 should be the lasting memory of Mass Effect, but I think we're quite far beyond that now. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, you can check out our full review of Mass Effect, the Legendary Edition. Next week, there will be a review in progress. Until then, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to Overlode and check out another one of our videos. Till next time, I'm Jordan Midler. See you later. Support for Overlode is provided by our incredible patrons. To support us and receive access to perks and exclusives such as Patreon-only video series, check out patreon.com/overload or click the link in the description. Thank you.